Hey everybody, let's see how many people get on in here and want to talk about culturally appropriating Black people. And as you can see, I have plenty of moving things happening, but also it's just really important to connect with people, to get people in here, to get people to talk through their feelings and experiences as it relates to cultural appropriation. Yes, I do have a full mattress, or actually a queen size mattress in my background. It is not sexy. Um, it is not what I would call the way I want to be doing these things, these lives. But at the end of the day, like I committed to doing these live series. It didn't matter what was going on in my life. So thank you and shout out to everybody who even, gave me all the love on the new house. Like super excited. My wife is really happy, which makes everything worth it, right? So thank you for that. But that's also why I have a mattress that has no bed in my background, because I literally just moved into that's what I'm saying, Mike. I literally just moved into my new house. But I wanted to make sure that I created this space because I don't specialize in cultural appropriation. So I want to say that like there are people who probably their scholarly work is all about cultural appropriation. And that is not my space. My space is really racial identity development, specifically Black identity development. I also do a lot on opening conversations, intergroup dialogue on race, specifically in social justice issues. I do identity development, so kind of like identity experiences and leadership, and then leadership studies. And so leadership approaches, styles, skills, traits, relationships, and processes for leadership studies and leadership development. And so cultural appropriation is not my space, but I think it's important, especially in Black History Month, for people to just be speaking and creating space like this. Yes. So Erica Killmonger, also known as, I'm not going to say your real name because that's why you have it not your real name. And so, Erica is like, I feel like she's like a mentor of mine in this work. She has so many one-liners. The one-liner that she came out with was like, we all getting shitted on by one ass, right? And so that one-liner, I learned that what we was in SJTI in 2015, and so that one-liner has stuck with me for the duration. Definitely follow Erica Killmonger on Facebook. She is going to challenge your thinking on the status quo. That's what we do here, right? So let me talk about how I am in this work. I smile a lot. That's who I am. That doesn't change. That doesn't change for me. That is a part of my core identity. And so when I'm talking about racism, especially with people who are a part of my community, we laugh, we joke, right? Me and Erica, Killmonger, when we went to lunch at Encore with other colleagues like Nicole and Bryce, had a great time laughing about all the struggles of racism. And so when you get to a point in this work where you normalize racism, so I'm also a critical race theorist, I guess. I would call myself a critical race theorist. And so racism is inescapable, right? Like, it doesn't matter how well-intended you are. It doesn't matter how good of a person you are. You are a part of a system that operates on the successful matriculation of racism, not just through space and time, but like history, but also through systems in which that we operate today. And so for me, I can't do this work as me and not smile and not have a good time. And so that's me. That is who I am. That's how I show up. Some people love to have a person who is just able to stick it to everybody. And I think it's important to create space for shame, blame, and guilt. I think that is important. I also think that people don't know what to do with that shame, blame, and guilt, which is why they end up shutting down end up paralyzing themselves, end up leaving spaces where, especially when we got 2 hours, right? I need all the work in 2 hours, right? And we know that's not enough time. And so I need folks to recognize that, like, you all, right, are products of racism. Doesn't matter what race you are. And then also racism can't be escaped. And so we are really going to be intentional about addressing racism. We need to be able to have open discussion about these things without blaming and shaming each other, especially when we don't have the time to build the relationship that pulls you out of that shame, blame, and guilt space. So like I even talk about, if I shame, blame, and guilt my son, right, all the way into his teenage years, by the time he turned an adult, he's not going to look to me to answer any questions when he has a problem, because every time he has a problem, I'm operating with him out of shame, right? I'm operating with him out of guilt. And so he's not going to come to me. And so my work is also very much so like that. It's based on building relationships. And so I don't operate with shame, blaming, and guilt because I do, but it takes more work than just 2 hours for me to get to that space with you, right? And so let's talk about cultural appropriation. So first, let's start with defining culture. Culture is the beliefs, ideas, traditions, speech, material objects, often associated with a particular group of people, right? And so that's culture. Cultural appropriation is the illegal, unjust, unfair, stealing and taking of something that doesn't belong to that culture. Right. And so intellectual property, traditional knowledge, cultural expressions, artifacts, taking those things without a person's permission or a culture's permission. And usually it's taking those things without the invitation. Right. So you can't get permission from a culture. Right. Like nobody just like you can't just go to Diddy and be like, yo, I want to put this, white rapper on, give me the permission to do that, right? Like, no, it's not like that. You got to be thinking about how have you been invited into these spaces to then get the permission, quote unquote permission. Appropriation can include the unauthorized use of another culture's dance, dress, music, language, folklore, cuisines and foods, traditions, medicine, religious symbols, right? Tattoos. We see that all the time. I even was a person who was like, I want to get the tribal sleeve, right? I have nothing to do with Asian Pacific Islander people, right? At least to my knowledge, I don't know. Because again, the slave trade, right? And so, thinking about it becomes harmful when the sources of the community in a minority group that has been oppressed or exploited try to come and tell you about the problem and you don't think it's a problem. That's when it becomes harmful, right? When you think that when the folks are not being particularly sensitive, when folks are not recognizing things as sacred, right? It happens all the time. And for Black people, in a lot of ways, Black culture is pop culture. At the very beginnings of it, especially these dances, these music, the TikTok, all that stuff. You see this stuff going viral, and this started by teenagers in the pandemic, spending time with each other because, to be real, right? They trying not to get in trouble, or they trying not to be out in the streets doing whatever. And so they make up these dances. I love that kids are dancing now, right? Because I remember a time when it wasn't cool to dance. Like coming up, like when I was a teenager, right? You had to be tough. That was the thing that we was about, was being tough, was being, machismo, right? You had to show how strong, how built, how brolic you are, right? And if you wasn't those things, then, you had a weapon or something like that. So now, like, it's cool that, you see these kids having dance off and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like back in the bebopping days and Anthony Gibson's days, right? when you have a dance off to see who's the best dancer in the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? Things like that. Where have we seen cultural appropriation, right? So we know in music. So we think about like Miley Cyrus and the twerking. Like, first and foremost, like, you ain't got ass like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just be real. Like Miley Cyrus with the twerking, and then also using black women as props for the twerking. I remember, her song with Jay-Z, put your hands up, right? Whatever. She was like, I don't even know who Jay-Z is. I'm like, the disrespect for you to put him in a song and not know who he is. The disrespect, right? We talk about Katy Perry, right? Madonna. I would even say Robin Thicke, Machine Gun Kelly. These are all musicians who I think have definitely appropriated black culture, right? How they dress, how they walk, how they talk, how they engage, how they introduce, how they welcome you. Like Obama doing the Brother Five is a real thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's absolutely Robin Thicke, right? Absolutely. And then go out and do that black woman wrong, right? Thank you for saying Robin Thicke. Thinking about athletics. So pissed that, the way he did Marvin Gaye. Ooh, I need to know about this. How he did Marvin Gaye. I have no idea. I'm be honest. I'm in a PhD program. All I do is read scholarly work. It's hard right now. Thinking about athletics. Oh my God. Right. I feel like, and especially in athletics, right? Especially in pro sports, they're always waiting on the next great white hope. And the next great white hope is probably somebody who is building their whole career off of LeBron, right? Building their whole career off of Serena. Let's talk about Tom in this greatest of all time conversation, right? Tom is a great white male athlete, right? But he ain't got nothing on Billie Jean King. Right? And that's even a woman. She's a white woman, but still, he's not the greatest of all time. Because at the end of the day, he ain't won more than Bill Russell. He ain't won more than Serena. Right? Like, if we want to really talk about people who have set the bar, he ain't won more than Simone Biles. Simone ain't lost yet. Okay? Ain't lost yet. I think about like Conor McGregor, right? And how he stole Floyd Mayweather's style and monetized it and made an empire out of literally losing. Built the empire. Only a white male athlete can build an empire out of losing. Again, Conor McGregor. Think about this man, right? Talking junk, blah, blah, blah. Now, he pretty much stole Floyd's style, right? Stole all his style, how he built up a fight. And then lose every single fight that you have ever since you stole the style. Bruh, if Floyd, we pay Floyd billions of dollars to hope that he lose. Right? You be white and lose and still win in a million in other ways. You see what I'm saying? Tell me the last black athlete that was in a solo sport that made millions off of losing. Nobody wants to see Adrian Broner anymore, right? Nobody wants to see him, right? I'm just saying, again, cultural appropriation. And then he don't lose. When he don't lose, we be like, yeah, that's our right. Exactly. Oh, I was betting against him, but he ain't lost. He the greatest. Cultural appropriation again. In education, right? So, blackface. Come on with it, right? And we're going to even add more to it because, like, education is bigger. It's so much deeper, right? We got Native American costumes. We got Asian tourist costumes, right? We got the fraternity parties like, yo, let's have a gangsters and goons party, right? These are white fraternities. Having gangsters and goons parties like, bring your guns, right? But the thing is, you don't want real thugs in there, though. You know what I'm saying? You don't want real thugs in there bringing their guns and all that, do you? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like, and y'all don't even understand systematically why we as black folks have so much more gang violence, drug violence in our communities. You don't even understand why that even is a thing for black folks. Y'all think it's fun, it's cool to just be like, yo, let's have a goons and gangsters party. Get out of here. Businesses. How many TikTok videos have we seen with these white businesses like, where the money reside, where the money reside? You can't dance. It's funny to me. It's funny. I think it's hilarious. Doesn't social media purport shared culture? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think also the thing is, I'm glad that you actually talked about that, because where is the credit? Right? Especially, Rod, you in the PhD program. Where the money reside as a black, it was started by a black person, right? Where's the credit? In all these spaces, we have to show our work, right? Or we're plagiarizing, or all these other things, copying, right? Trademarks is a reason why we don't have, so people can not use your identity or whatever. You have trademarks in business, right? But when it comes to culture, we don't want to give credit where credit is due, right? We want to take it on and we want to get all the winnings for ourselves. That's the problem. That's what I'm saying. I appreciate that question, Rod, because we don't address things in that same way. You got to give credit where credit is due in all these other spaces. But when it comes to culture, I could just steal it. It's mine. And I think that's also a part of American culture. American culture is culturally appropriated anyway, right? Like, what American culture is known for is the oppression of all other cultures and then the stealing of culture so that they can turn it into something that they can monetize for their capitalistic gain. That's essentially what we're talking about, right? America doesn't have culture. It's just a whole bunch of stolen cultures. I forgot to talk about how athletes in braids and cornrows, right? Women in cornrows, right? Woo! It's some work there that needs to be done, because they like looking at, oh, it's cool. Again, look, do the history. Black people wore cornrows so they can hide food, medical supplies, right? Things that they can keep themselves healthy and safe so they can give to their families, so that if the slave master didn't find it, they can take it back to their house. That's why they did the hairstyles like that. Right? Ronda Rousey, Fergie, Fergie thinks she cool. She thinks she down because she can rap. Like, I'm like, first and foremost, yeah, I don't know if you're writing your stuff. I'm not a not Fergie fan, I guess. Her music play on the radio, I would know it, right? But Black Eyed Peas, right? And even still, I heard Black Eyed Peas got rid of their black female artist to replace her with her. So I'm like, whoa, will.i.am got some questions that he needs to answer to the black community. For me, again, I don't care, but it is messed up. So here's some do's and don'ts, right? Here's some don'ts, some things that you need to make sure that you don't do, and some things that you should think about doing, right? As it relates to cultural appropriation, if you want to take on, right? Blackface. Just stay away from it. Get it? Like, we oftentimes revere and look up to a lot of black figures in America, and black comic book characters, right? But it doesn't mean that you need to paint your face black. Like, I don't like it. Like I think about in elementary school when we did the Abraham Lincoln play and stuff like that. They didn't spray paint the black kid's face white, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to understand what that's connected to. It's connected to all the years of theater history in America where they depicted a black person by a white person as dumb, stupid, ignorant. And the best way that they was able to do that was through painting a white actor's face black, right? Giving them big red lips, those things. Like we have to know that there's connected to this history, right? Um, we want to pay homage, right, to the origins and acknowledge the artistry ideas and acknowledge the origins of any of these cultural ideas that we want to take on, right? You never want to adopt a sacred artifact as an accessory. Like, again, for Black women, hair is just sacred. You know what I'm saying? For Black women, hair it's so, especially in America, right? They can't wear their hair in their styles because they get ridiculed in popular society. But when a white woman wears it, it's trendy, it's edgy, it's the new thing, right? Like, how sacred it is for us to be able to have space to be able to just call ours, right? Hair, black hair styles, you know what I'm saying? It's so sacred. So we need to make sure that you don't take artifacts and just be like, yo, it's so cool. I got this African print dress. African print purse or whatever. What's the history behind it? You know what I mean? What is even the intentionality behind it, right? Like, you didn't go into it like, yo, I wanna support this Black business. It's usually, oh, I thought that was so cute. Oh my God, I think my girl's gonna like this. Like, please. Again, I think it's also we need to recognize that culture is fluid, right? Like, meaning that things change. And so in a time where it might have been cool for you to wear blackface, it ain't cool no more. So why are we trying to argue for it, right? It was cool for the white people to say the N-word in the derogatory way for a long time. It's not cool no more, right? Like, it never been cool, right? But now we trying to get to a point where it's like recognizing the power that has been taken from people because of that word, right? And so recognizing again, we need to recognize that, like, we can't substitute appropriation and assimilation as diversity as well, right? People's ideas shouldn't just be reflected in our initiatives, but also the people should be reflected. And if they can't be, especially if we don't have enough Black people to do this thing, we might need to go back to the drawing board, right? We might need to think about this thing a little bit differently. Because I'm be honest, especially some of these rural, like, I'm from Michigan. So rural Michigan looks very different than rural North Carolina. And some of the rural places in Michigan just don't have Black people in it at all, right? And so your Black History Month probably needs to look a little different, right, than what it would look like in an all-Black community, all-Black school, etc. We need to engage with other cultures on a more than aesthetic level. Martin Luther King is still seen as one of the greatest leaders in world history. And we talk about him through his speeches, which has a lot of American, like stereotypical American. He kind of challenged a lot of stereotypical American ideologies of Black people, right? He has a PhD. He speaks well. He is very vocal. He has a vocabulary, right? For a Black person in the 60s, of course, they're like, oh my God, he talks well. So of course I'm going to listen to him. But the reality is we need to be acknowledging Dr. King for his activism, not for the speeches, okay? Not just the speeches. He's a lot more than just a good orator, right? He was actually in the streets with the people doing the work. That's what we need to be more focused on, right? What would America be like if we love Black people as much as we love Black culture? And also, giving credit, considering even royalties is something that they don't do when they steal from Black culture. They think it's a cultural exchange, right? That's some bullshit white talk to say, I don't have to pay you. I don't have to acknowledge you, right? Um, I don't have to. Speak on the origins of whatever idea because it's a cultural exchange. Bullshit, right? Um, and so some questions that you can think about, right? As I get to the close of this thing, some questions you can think about as it relates to cultural appropriation and what are think about especially as it relates to Black people, right? Do I give credit where it's due? Like, do I know where this came from? Do I make sure that they are giving credit? Do I make sure that they know that I'm using their work? Interesting. And let's talk about the Henrietta Lacks situation, right? Whole ass woman died, cell stayed alive. They decided to use that in pretty practically every modern day medical advancement in modern day history in America. And then the family just got paid for it in 2019, right? Like, this woman died in the 90s, maybe the 80s, 70s, right? And they've been using her cells who stayed alive and made billions of dollars off of Henrietta Lacks. Didn't want to pay her. Would that even happen to a white person? Would that even happen to a white family? No. Do I acknowledge the struggle of the Black community when I wear cornrows, right? Do I change my accent address in a way that is influenced by Black culture, right? Especially when white people wear cornrows, when white people wear dreads, are they acknowledging the struggle that Black people go through to get a job, right? To get acknowledged and seen as able-minded, able-bodied people with their because of their hair, right? When they wear it in schools have decided to literally tell students that cornrows is not a part of the uniform, right? They have to wear straight hair. Dreads is not a part of the uniform. So when the white person with dreads, right, and it looks a hot mess sometimes, right? Are they acknowledging the struggle? Right? Or is it just cool so you can be cool in front of your white friends? Again, do I fight against racism every day? Do I let racist comments slip by? That's, again, a thing that you need to think about as it relates to cultural appropriation. Because Black folks have no problem allowing white people into their communities, right? Especially communities where I grew up with some white people, right? They were, we played ball together, you know what I'm saying? Like brothers, you know what I'm saying, back in high school, right? At the same time, this also same person is not allowing white people to just talk shit about Black people openly because they have Black friends that like literally are their best friends, right? There was a level of anti-racism that came with being a part of Black culture because I went to all 99% Black high school, right? So if you hanging out with us, you know what I'm saying, you was a part of the culture, even though you wasn't Black. Do I allow anti-Blackness to continue in my home, right? Or do I even speak up? Do I speak up about it? Again, this idea that I can sagging my pants is, that's what they do, right? That's what it means to be cool now, right? Okay, cool, right? But when Black men are being chased down by the police for sagging their pants, right? When Black men are being chased down by the police because of what they dress like, what are you saying in those moments, right? What are you saying about police brutality? What are you doing in your community to address that against Black people? I'm being honest, man. You pull up the arrest records from any city. I'll be honest in saying people of color is probably getting arrested, pulled over, all that stuff at higher rates. What are you doing? Right? What are you doing about that? Have you ever asked a Black member of your community about appropriation? And also, have you ever asked them, especially for my white people on here, have you ever asked them, have you ever appropriated it and what did that look like? Right? Because oftentimes, the cognitive dissonance, right? Yeah, racism happens, but it doesn't happen here, right? Cultural appropriation, it happens, but it doesn't happen here. You see what I'm saying? That's the bull. So we need to be able to create space that we challenge that. The last question is, do you value Black lives or do you value Black culture? Comedy is another big arena that people don't like to acknowledge all the bullshit that happens. 100% Moody, right? Like, yo, and I'll be honest, like I grew up in the 90s, right? I was born in the 80s, but grew up in the 90s where, I mean, it was all kinds of stuff that you can't say now. You shouldn't say now. You shouldn't even try to trade a joke around it, right? Times have changed, and also know that, like, just like technology, right? If we use technology from the 80s, if we use technologies from the 90s, like if anybody in here using Windows 2000, you know what I'm saying? like we'll be behind. And so you got to think about it in the same way. Like, culture is fluid. Identity development is fluid. And so what could have been cool in the 90s ain't gonna work in the 2020s, right? Hey, I appreciate you, Pop. Nobody has the big tube TV anymore, right? Like, like that big TV. Like, Pops, I know you know what I'm talking about because I remember you having the big TV, right? Like, you ain't got that TV no more. You know what I'm saying? Just like technology changes how we interact and engage in the world, social, cultural identity, understanding, and language, right? We can't use some of the things that we said. We can't do some of the things that we did before because we have evolved, we have grew, we have changed as a society, right? Yep, that's a laugh. You know, Pop, you know. We have changed. And so that's kind of directed to Moody, right? Like, I appreciate you even saying that because, again, oftentimes we used to say this back, you know, and it's like, bruh, like, you're not using Windows 2000. You ain't like, oh, you ain't going to Microsoft like, oh, man, back in Windows 2000. Like, do anybody even remember what Facebook originally looked like? Because they switched that shit up and then you just got to go with it, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about, right? And so, you know, here's some thoughts, some last thoughts. Imagery and performance, you know, imagery and appearance is something that's very performative. You know, when we're talking about allyship, how are you really showing up, building relationships with the people, getting to know them as individuals, right? And as a community, right? Don't be just the person who wants to be at the Black Lives Matter protest because it was cool. So you can tell your friends, I was there, right? But what are you doing at the boardroom table, right? What does that conversation look like at the table? You know, is there social justice initiatives happening in your college, university, department, organization, company? Are you even leading or even trying to be a part of those? Right? Like, if you really want your allyship to not be performative, right? Actually do something. Make a mistake publicly and then allow people to be able to pull you in, right? If you want to really create change. We have to give credit where credit is due in every other industry, every society. You can't use a trademark without somebody's permission. You can't use somebody's image without somebody's permission. You can't use somebody's knowledge, information without somebody's permission or citing that work. But when it comes to culture, right? When it comes to culture, you can just take it because it's all of ours. No, it's not. I don't agree with that. And then we have some people are like, yo, well, what about jeans? Like, Americans created jeans and everybody's wearing them now. And I'm like, that's called assimilation. Right? Think about like Native Americans. They forced them to wear pants. Think about the enslaved. They forced them to wear clothing. You know, you see all the pictures of the you know, the bodies where you can see the chest, you can see the thighs and all that stuff with their garments, original African garment, of early, 1400s and stuff, 1500s, 1600s, right? They forced them to. In order to survive, you have to, in a society that is dominated by people who wear a certain type of clothing, you had to wear that, right? Otherwise, you were demonized, ostracized, potentially even killed. They could have killed a black man literally because because a white child saw his dong. You know what I'm saying? Like that's assimilation, right? That's for survival, okay? When we focus on, again, this whole idea, when we focus on the imagery and not the relationship, not the advocacy, not the allyship, when we focus on the appearance, right, and not the imagery, not the allyship, not the advocacy, that's where we get cultural appropriation, right? And you want to look and sound and feel funny, cool, right? Where that is literally a person's lifestyle. And that's the problem, because you're trying to look cool and feel whatever in that moment, when the reality is that we have to deal with that all the time, right? We have to deal with the repercussions, the anti-blackness of people ostracizing us for wearing braids, telling us that we're not going to get a job because we have dreads, or we're not going to get a good job because we have dreads. Telling us because, well, you got arrested because your pants were sagging, right? Because we can see your drawers. You got arrested. You got pulled over. We want your ID because you just looked guilty, right? Whereas white people, okay, they do it and it's like, oh, you're edgy. Oh, stop it. Hey, any thoughts, any questions, any perspectives, feel free to reach out to me at info@doingthegoodwork. Also, feel free to shoot me a message, right? Like I'm a person who is very open to allowing people to ask questions. If you want to get on my schedule, that's where it's a different conversation, right? But I'm always open to questions. I use the voice chat message function all the time, so I can get you an answer, my thought, really quickly. It might not be based on systematic structures and work that I've put together and organized for people to pay for, right? That's a different thing. But always, info@doingthegoodwork. Send me a question, shoot me anything, shoot me a shout out, share this video if you felt like this was great. If you feel like you learned something, if you feel like other people can learn something, I appreciate you all. Let's stay connected. Keep doing the good work.